Hi guys, welcome to this video lesson about the Romantic Age. We are on page 240 of your workbook. The Romantic Age was, we have a time span which goes from 1760 up to 1837. It was called Romantic because we are going to study in literature the Romantic poets. But actually, it was an age of revolutions because we have the French and American Revolution and also the Industrial Revolution in England. Today, I just want to explore with you this interactive timeline with the most important historical events of the time of this period. And we're going to look at some, we're going to read the description of these historic events, and we're going to look at some classic picture of the period. Very well, let's start from George III, who was crowned as King of England. He comes to the throne in 1760. He succeeded his grandfather, George II. He was only 22 and was the first of the Hanoverian kings. He was born in Britain and brought up in Britain because the Hanoverian kings was an old family from Germany. He was nicknamed Farmer George because of his passion for agriculture, and during his reign, Britain lost his American colonies, but he grew in power in the leadership of Europe. So his European power grew a lot. Okay, let's go to the next important historic event. James Watt invented his steam engine. He patented a new steam engine, which was formed by a boiler and a cylinder. And okay, here we have the technical description. The steam was admitted to the cylinder and then drawn into the cool condenser. External atmospheric pressure then pushed the piston down the cylinder. This steam engine was used in the mines, in foundries, and in the textile industry. Alright, let's go now to the next important historic event, the Boston Tea Party. It was an event which led to the beginning of the American War of Independence. The reasons why it was called the Boston Tea Party, because it happened in the Boston Harbor, and the tea bags were thrown by the rebels, were thrown into the Boston's harbor. The illegitimate imposition of the taxes by the English government caused a protest by the American settlers, and in 1773 in Boston, some settlers who were dressed up as redskins threw the cargo of 3 English ships containing tea into the sea. London reacted by closing the harbor of Boston and sending new troops to control America. After this event, we have the beginning of the war. And the representatives of the American colonies, who were the rebels, who rebelled against the English power, the English government. They all met in Philadelphia to demand the separation from the motherland, from England. An important document was signed, the Declaration of Independence, on the 4th July 1776. And okay, after this there was an English military intervention, and the England was helped by France, Spain, and Holland. France, Spain, and Holland helped the American settlers, sided with them, and their intervention was decisive for the final victory in Yorktown in 1781. So the American colonies declared their independence, right? And here we have the signing of this important document, the Declaration of Independence. And this document was written by Thomas Jefferson, who was going to become the third president of the United States. He was a lawyer from Virginia, Thomas Jefferson, and he drew up the Declaration of Independence. The Federal Republic of the United States was founded, and the natural and inalienable rights of man were written down for the first time in history. Okay, let's go to the next important event. William Pitt the Younger became the Prime Minister, and he was George III asked him to become Prime Minister, and his office was going to last for 18 years. And during this period, he promoted the trade and the finance, supporting the theory of Adam Smith of laissez-faire. Pitt tried to simplify this financial system of England, and he tried to reduce the national debt. But let's see now what is happening in the USA. George Washington became the first American president, and the American Constitution, ratified by the first American states, established the principles of presidentialism, of subdivision of powers, and in particular of the subdivision of the legislative power between the Senate and the House of the Representatives. And the first president was George Washington. Britain goes to war with France, so what happened? After the execution of Louis XIV, France declared the war against Britain and Holland. The French were unbeatable on land, and by 1797 Napoleon had defeated much of Europe, much of European countries. But France had a very weak navy. For this reason, in 1805, Britain encouraged the Battle of Trafalgar, which was a naval fight against France and Spain. But the war continued until the final defeat of Napoleon with the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. And the Battle of Trafalgar the Battle of Waterloo marked the end of the Napoleon supremacy. Ireland becomes part of the UK, 1801. Great Britain and Ireland were formally joined under the Act of Union to create the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The Irish Parliament in Dublin was dissolved despite the Union. Catholics were still unable to vote at general elections or to hold parliamentary and most public offices. And then we have the Battle of Trafalgar, and the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy defeated France and Spain at Cape Trafalgar off the coast of Spain. British naval hero, the Admiral Horatio Nelson, led the British Navy, but was finally killed after the victory. Okay, and Britain took the complete control of the seas and the possibility to control the trade and the economy in many countries. So the Battle of Trafalgar was a fight against France and Spain. So it was fought against France and Spain. The regency of George IV. George III suffered of attacks of mental illness and became incapable of reigning. The son, George IV, was obliged to took the government, and he was made Prince Regent. And reigned while his father was still alive, and this period is known as the Regency. Okay, the Luddite riots, and during the Napoleonic Wars, working conditions in the new textile factories were becoming very difficult. Food prices constantly rose, thus provoking riots and rebellions, especially in the factories. The workmen who smashed, they broke the machines which had taken their work away. These rebels were called Luddites, after the name of their leader, who was Ned Ludd. Okay, very good. Finally, the Battle of Waterloo, which marked the end of Napoleon's supremacy in Europe. On June 1815, a decisive battle was fought at Waterloo. The British and the Allied army, under the command of the Duke of Wellington, faced Napoleon's Imperial Guard, which outnumbered the British. With the help of the Prussian troops, Wellington defeated Napoleon. Therefore, there was a final ending of 20 years of bloody conflicts throughout Europe. And finally, Napoleon was defeated. The Peterloo Massacre. This was a serious incident where a peaceful crowd was fired by the local soldiers that wanted to stop their freedom of expression. The trade unions are legalized. The trade unions are workers' organizations and were finally legalized in 1824. The Metropolitan Police, the Metropolitan Police Force is established in 1829. They are known as Bobbies, after the name of their founder, who was Sir Robert Peel, also called Bobby. This new unarmed force provided an alternative to the army as a means of maintaining the public order. William IV was the next king and of England. He inherited the throne. He was 64 years old, and his two older brothers had died without leaving any heir. The Whig Earl of Grey was become prime minister during his reign, and we have several reforms. William died, and after his death, his 18 years old niece Victoria succeeded him to the British throne. Let's see some some important political reform. We have the Great Reform Act. The Parliament passed the Great Reform Act, which extended the vote to almost all male members of the middle classes and allowed people in counties to vote on the same basis as those in towns. Home ownership was the only qualification. Then we have the abolition of slavery, which was passed by Parliament in 1833, and so there was the abolition of slavery in the West Indies. And then Queen Victoria became Queen of England. She was very young, only 18 years old. 2 years later, she married Prince Albert. He was a German prince. They got married, had 9 children. Her reign was very, very long because she was crowned in 1837 and finally died in 1901. So her reign lasted for 64 years. Okay, well, let's go now and see the next page. Okay, let's have an overall view of the main trends of the Romantic period. So this was a period of great revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, the American and French Revolution. The United States of America was born, and the main principle was no taxation without representation. Then the Industrial Revolution, we have coal, iron, and steam power, which were used in the development of the factory system. And the steam engines increased the production. Steam locomotion of the railways improved the transport and the communications all over England. The towns grew because the agricultural workers moved from the south to the Midlands and the north of England, which were the newly industrialized manufacturing centers, and they really created labor job opportunities. The urban working classes lived in very terrible conditions. The Industrial Revolution resulted in the rise of the middle class business interest. And here we have the philosophy of the famous theories of Adam Smith, who was a philosopher, and his theory about economic liberalism, which encouraged the free trade and the economic self-interest. A new sensibility arose with the emphasis on the power of imagination, power of sensations and feelings. There was a new interest in the individualism and escapism. The escapism was a kind of evasion from reality, and in particular a kind of avoidance of unpleasant, boring, and difficult aspect of the daily life. And we are going to see how this new sensibility will have its results in the literary production. And in particular, the concept of beauty was no longer linked to the classical images, but was associated with the great and sublime in nature. So nature and the vision of nature that had the poets of this period was very important. Here we have a beautiful picture of the Lake District. And nature in particular was perceived differently, not as a manifestation of the harmony of the divine laws, but as a living being. In particular, the Lake District, which is set in the northern of England, this spectacular landscape deeply influenced two romantic poets, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. They lived in this region, the Lake District. Okay, that's all for today. See you for the next video lesson. Okay, take care, bye.